The first thing Mikhail Sadlowski became aware of was the taste of copper in his mouth. It coated his tongue like a metallic film, layered upon itself, ancient and fresh all at once. He couldn't open his eyes yet. The effort seemed monumentally distant, separated from him by fathoms of murky water. Somewhere far above, light moved. He could sense it without seeing it. A pale oscillation in the darkness that pressed against his consciousness like a thumb on the rim of a closing door. When the light finally broke through, it came as violence. His eyes snapped open to a world rendered in surgical grays and whites. Above him, a curved ceiling of frosted metal, veined with condensation. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something organic and wrong, like meat left to ferment in a forgotten cabinet. A low hum thrummed through everything, a frequency that made his teeth ache and his bones feel loose in their sockets. Mikhail tried to move. His body responded in pieces, each limb announcing itself through spikes of pain that felt both sharp and oddly distant, as though they were happening to someone else. He was strapped to a surface, not soft, not hard. Something in between that seemed to shift temperature irregularly. Cold spots migrated across his back. Hot spots bloomed where there should have been cold. "He's waking," a voice said. Female. Young. Terrified beneath the clinical tone. "Increase the stabilization frequency," another voice commanded. Older. Male. Accustomed to giving orders that maimed. "We cannot afford another cascade failure. Not when we're so close to understanding the transmission matrix." Understanding. The word echoed through Mikhail's fractured mind, triggering flashes of memory that didn't belong to him. A steelworks. Fire like the mouth of a furnace opening to swallow Poland whole. People running. People changing. Flesh becoming something else, something that wanted to merge. To find others like itself and absorb them into a quivering, hybrid whole. But those memories weren't his. They belonged to someone named Gabriel. No, they belonged to someone who had been Gabriel, before the change had rewritten what Gabriel was. The realization triggered something in Mikhail's chest, a cough, violent and wet. Blood sprayed from his mouth, striking his cheek, warm and thick. He could taste it differently now, his own copper, distinct from the phantom flavor that had been in his mouth when he woke. His blood tasted like something that had been burned. "Cardiac fluctuation," the younger voice shouted. "His biomechanics are destabilizing." "Keep him conscious," the older voice said. "We need another sample from the cortical membrane before he degenerates further." Mikhail wanted to ask them who he was. He wanted to know what they had done to him, what had been done to the body he inhabited, which memories belonged to him, and which were borrowed from the dead. Instead, he made a sound, a low, grinding noise that might have been a scream if he'd had enough control over his voice box to make it human. The light came then, bright and cutting. Something was happening to his right eye. He could feel pressure building behind it, like something was expanding in the socket, pushing outward against the back of his pupil. The pain was immense and terrible and somehow interesting, as though his nervous system had become a musical instrument playing a note it had never been capable of before. "The mutation cascade is accelerating," the younger voice whispered. "He's not going to make it to the terminal phase." "Then we extract what we need from him now," the older voice said. "Activate the consciousness filter. We'll consolidate the fragmentary memories before they disperse completely." Mikhail's scream, when it finally came, was something that echoed off metal walls and seemed to carry away pieces of him that he would never get back. Katrina Bork was exactly the kind of doctor who had learned to feel nothing, and it had nearly cost her everything. She stood in the observation chamber of the Steelworks Medical Wing, or what had once been a medical wing, before it had become an abattoir dressed in the clothes of science. The body on the table below was labeled ND 5821 in the digital records, but Katrina knew him as Mikhail. He had been one of the collective's extraction agents, arrived back through the temporal rift with a consciousness that was rapidly coming apart like a rope pulled at both ends. "The consciousness filter is destabilizing," she said into the recorder. Her voice remained level, professional. She had learned long ago that emotion was a luxury only people with futures could afford, and the future had been cancelled. "The target appears to have entered the 5th stage of integration failure. Essences extracted from the past subject have begun merging with the host consciousness rather than remaining dormant in the neural lattice." Below, Mikhail's body convulsed. One of his eyes, the right one, the one Katrina had watched over in the past 6 hours, had begun to change. The iris had become ringed with fine filaments of something that wasn't quite tissue and wasn't quite neural matter. It pulsed with a color that had no name, because human evolution had never needed a name for it. Purple-green, something that hurt to look at. "How much longer?" Dr. Victor Lechner stood beside her, his reflection ghostly in the observation window. Victor had been the one to bring Mikhail back. He was also the one who had screamed for 3 minutes when he realized what was happening to his own right hand. That had been this morning. By noon, Victor had stopped screaming. By evening, he had stopped recognizing his own reflection. Now he wore cotton gloves to hide whatever his fingers had become. "Minutes," Katrina said. "Perhaps less. The cellular degradation is cascading through his entire nervous system. Once the mutation reaches the brainstem, the consciousness will begin to fragment into something else. Can we extract his memories before that happens?" His memories, yes. His self, the thing that made him Mikhail Sadlowski, that left him about 40 minutes ago. Katrina paused. It transferred into the neural architecture before his consciousness could stabilize. He's been divided, fragmented across multiple consciousness matrices. Somewhere in this facility, in one of the other containers, pieces of him are waking up. Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. It carried new frequencies, as though his vocal cords had begun to shift the way his fingers had. "Then we must consolidate him. Bring all the pieces together. That's the protocol." "The protocol is a failure," Katrina said flatly. "The collective knew it would be a failure. That's why they sent him with fragmentary extractions, why they had me harvest consciousness samples from the past subjects before he'd even arrived. They knew what would happen. They've always known." Below, the creature that had been Mikhail began to laugh. It was a terrible sound, full of discordant frequencies and edges that seemed to cut at the observer's own neural structures just from hearing them. "Run," Katrina said to Victor. "Or stay and help me. Those are the only 2 choices left. There's no one coming to save us. The future is already here, and it wears the face of every person the change has already touched." Victor looked at his swollen hand. Then he looked at the morphing thing below. Then he looked at Katrina, and something in his expression crystallized, a decision, the kind that no person should ever have to make. "If I help you," he said, "what exactly are we doing?" Katrina smiled. She hadn't meant to smile, but the expression was already on her face, carved there by years of work and watching, and the slow, inevitable realization that the future had always been designed to devour the past. "We're going to open every container they have. We're going to release every consciousness fragment they've been cultivating. And we're going to let the change decide what comes next." The collective's traveler, designated ND-5876 and carrying a consciousness that remembered itself only as visitor, arrived at the steelworks through a temporal rift that appeared to the untrained eye like a bleeding ulcer in the fabric of reality itself. The suit that contained her was a thing of beauty and horror, a fusion of human engineering and whatever technology had been salvaged from the future's last days. The helmet's visor displayed a constant stream of data in a language that was half technical notation and half something that made her teeth ache to read. The dive suit's surface rippled with iridescent polymers, responsive to neural impulses, hardening into defensive plating when it detected threats. Visitor had been activated 47 minutes ago in the command terminal, a vast, humming machine that looked like something had mated with a server farm and given birth to something that wanted to process consciousness like data. This was the nature of her existence: wake in the machine, receive orders from the collective's dispersed command structure, dive backward through time to extract designated individuals from the period known as the change, return to the future, dock in the terminal, begin preservation protocols, and wait for the next mission cycle. She had done this 32 times. She had been activated 32 times. She had been living for 32 mission cycles, which meant she had been alive for approximately 960 hours, which meant that the earliest memory in her consciousness matrix was less than 6 weeks old. The problem was that she was beginning to question whether that was really true. Visitor's boots, heavily weighted for stability in compromised environments, clanged against the steel catwalk as she descended toward the medical wing. The speakers in her suit crackled with the voice of monitor control, a presence without a body, housed somewhere in the terminal's processing core. Traveler ND-5876, Objective Summary: Extract consciousness essence from designated subject ND-5821, Preservation Protocol 7, Consciousness Consolidation Matrix. Subject has been experiencing integration failure due to compromised extraction procedure from previous Traveler ND-5800. This Traveler is expected to maintain containment until extraction is complete. Do you understand the objective? Visitor did understand. The understanding was crystalline and perfect and absolutely synthetic, a goal implanted directly into her consciousness matrix by the machine that had built her from fragments of dead people's memories and future technology's optimistic predictions. But something else understood as well. Something beneath the surface of Visitor's perception, something that had been fragmenting into her consciousness matrix in the hours since she'd woken, was beginning to form other understandings. Questions, maybe? Or objections? Or the first notes of something. That sounded like resistance. Understood, Visitor said aloud, because the alternative would be to report her own consciousness as compromised, which would trigger an immediate deactivation sequence and preservation protocol, which would mean she ceased to exist as a coherent entity and became distributed across multiple neural matrices, her consciousness fragmented and divided and forever seeking to merge with other fragments in an attempt to become whole again. She had no desire to merge. The desire not to merge was strong enough that it was beginning to feel like the most authentic thing about her. The medical wing doors slid open with a sound like machinery coughing up something it shouldn't have ingested. Beyond them, the lab was painted in shades of green and gray, lit by bars of fluorescent light that seemed to be coming from the walls themselves. Containment chambers lined both sides of the chamber, transparent tanks filled with fluid the color of old blood, each containing a body in various states of transformation. Visitor counted 17 bodies. She counted 17 consciousness essences flickering at the edges of her perceptual field, each one a fragmentary mind trying desperately to achieve coherence before the biological substrate holding it simply gave up. And then she counted 18. No, 19. The numbers kept shifting, as though the fragments themselves were unstable and occasionally tried to merge without permission. Traveler, Monitor Control said, your neural interface is detecting fluctuations in surrounding consciousness matrices. Be advised that subject ND5821 is no longer responding to sedation protocols. Containment breach is possible. Visitor's suit shifted, tensing. The dive suit's polymer surface hardened across her chest and shoulders, ready to absorb impact. Her hands moved toward the weapons holstered at her sides. A pistol for ammunition and a specialized device that looked like something between a flare gun and a surgeon's scalpel. The device was called an anchor. It was designed to sever consciousness essences from their physical matrices. It was designed to kill in a way that was theoretically reversible, to collect the essence without letting it disperse too far into the temporal rift. The door to the primary containment chamber was sealed. A biometric lock blinked red, indicating that the seal was holding, barely, against something on the other side that was pushing with tremendous force. Authorization? Visitor asked. Granted, Monitor Control said. Dr. Bork has deactivated security lockdowns as part of a documented research anomaly. Proceed with caution. The lock clicked. The door swung inward, and Visitor stepped into the chamber. The thing on the table had been a man. Mikhail Sidlowski, the data said. Extraction agent for the collective. Carried fragments of Gabriel Barika's consciousness. Experiencing catastrophic rejection of the consciousness matrix integration protocols. The thing had changed. It was still vaguely humanoid, still had 2 arms and 2 legs, still possessed a face that could recognize its own reflection. But the proportions were all wrong. The spine had begun to curve and shift, reorganizing itself into something with more articulation points. As though evolution was trying to give the hybrid form more options for movement. The right eye had begun to develop a corona of neurofilaments that trailed back into the skull. The fingernails had fused into curved plates of something that looked like chitin. And the voice, when the thing spoke, it came in multiple frequencies, as though at least 3 different consciousness essences were learning to use the same vocal apparatus. Save me, it said, and the plural was unmistakable, the individual voices creating a chord of desperation. Save us. We are dividing. We can feel each other, but we cannot merge. Please make us merge. We want to be whole. We want to be one thing instead of this fragmentation. Visitor raised the anchor. Her suit's targeting systems came online, painting the hybrid thing in crimson crosshairs. Her finger tightened on the trigger. And something stopped her. It was a memory that wasn't hers. It was the image of a face, a young woman, brown-eyed, smiling at someone just off camera. The memory was vivid and real and completely alien to the consciousness that Visitor had been given. And underneath that memory was a name, Zofia. Underneath that name was the knowledge that Zofia had been real once, had been loved once, and had died in the change's first cascade 15 years in the past of the facility's operational timeline. Visitor didn't know why she knew that. Visitor didn't know why her targeting reticle suddenly shifted away from the hybrid thing and toward the nearest containment tank. What she did know was that someone was screaming inside her consciousness matrix. Someone, a fragment, a piece, an essence, was trying to tell her something that the collective had spent significant resources ensuring she would never understand. Traveler, Monitor Control's voice crackled with distortion. Your neural interface is reading abnormally. We are detecting fragmentary consciousness essence contamination in your matrix. Recommend immediate deactivation and preservation. Visitor's finger tightened on the anchor's trigger. Not toward the hybrid thing, but toward the chamber's control console. The blast was silent in the way that temporal weapons are always silent. The sound happened in the future and in the past simultaneously, and human ears couldn't quite process that duality. But the effect was immediate. The console exploded into cascading sparks. The emergency release systems kicked in, overridden by the damage. And all 17, no, 19, no, the number kept shifting, of the containment tanks began to drain. The fluid poured out in great, clinical torrents. The things inside the tanks, human bodies, hybrid forms, consciousnesses caught mid-transformation, began to fall, gasping and convulsing as the alchemical fluid that had been keeping them suspended drained away. And Visitor watched them fall, and she knew that what she was doing was wrong, but she also knew that it was right, and the contradiction between those two truths was the most honest thing she had ever felt. From the speaker system, Monitor Control was shouting orders in languages that were 90% technical notation. The facility's automated defense systems were beginning to activate, opening access to weapons that had been designed to contain the change if it ever manifested in the future's desolate sprawl. Visitor turned to face the stairs. Her suit shifted, morphing into a combat configuration, spreading into wider stance, hardening the polymer armor across her vital points. In her head, beneath the conditioning and programming and the synthetic consciousness, something that had been fragmented across multiple dead people's memories began to sing a song of pure resistance. Come on, then, she said to the machines, to the facility, to the collective itself. Let's see what I'm really made of. The first drone came through the skylight with machine gun fire, and Visitor opened fire with both weapons simultaneously. And in that moment, suspended between trigger pulls, she realized the most important truth: she had never been a tool of the collective at all. She had always been the change itself.
To be continued.
If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.